I'm Ravikumar Kashi. I'm an artist and I write an art and I teach. When I started doing paper, I was trying to make it look stronger, sturdier. After doing this body of work in the last 2 years or so, I realized what I was trying to do with the earlier set of works. I was trying to do pulp painting for a long time, but I had difficulty in getting the pulp out of the nozzle and all that. Earlier, I would use mug and all kinds of containers to pour it on the canvas. I wanted to control it through a nozzle, which was not happening. So at that particular day, I was trying to help a participant in a workshop, and then I was trying to help that student, and then that problem didn't get solved. But after the workshop, okay, this consistency, maybe it will come through the nozzle. I tried it, and it worked. Because the material bring its own dimension. It will not listen to your ideas. And then I said, okay, can I do an alphabet with this? Then I already thought of something else. So things get combined. And then it starts expanding. In the conventional way of making paper, you are dependent on the vat size and the frame size. But because of this new technique, which I have kind of fine-tuned, I can make 20 feet, 25 feet, one piece. So that opens up a huge possibility which was not there before. My practice is very artisanal. I don't allow others to do the work. Every stage has my touch, if you want to call that. So that is very important to me, because any one stage you may want to give more pressure, less pressure, thick line, thin line. The work will look very different, which is limiting in terms of how much I can do, but there is a personal touch to every inch of the work, which is, I think, very important for me. In the working stage, I try to hold off the outside world, not entering that. That's why I call it like a lab, where you are not really thinking about the outcomes and all that. It's okay, just play around. That gives you a sense of lightness. Otherwise, it becomes very heavy, very conscious kind of production, which I don't like. So sometimes you don't have all the ideas in place. As you go, there is a word called making as thinking. So as you're making, you start thinking, you're reflecting, you go back and forth. So it is not necessary to have complete clarity of what I'm doing. In the present work, the initial idea is to experience the visceral quality of the paper, its delicateness, its ephemeral qualities, tactile qualities, and then the rest of the ideas start coming in. So as a person, you think your skin is the end of you as a physical body, but if you see through microscope, it's porous, so that the moisture and heat can all go in and out and all that. The idea behind the title, we don't end at our edges, to establish the bigger concept that we are all porous, physically as well as psychologically. Like I breathe in and breathe out, right? You can't hold on to the breath. So you have to give it out. So the idea of exchange, that is very important. For exchange to happen, you need that mechanism for things to come in and go out. So that is where the idea of porosity comes in. So it's a physical thing as well as a metaphorical kind of idea that we keep exchanging. We are not like silos. We are not like an island. In our time, there is so much pressure or put people in smaller silos of identity. So this would be like an antithesis. Like if you start establishing that, we have to give and take. You can't be like an isolated person or a society or a community. The title becomes at an individual level, society level, and much larger level. So it's a very abstract idea as well as a very physical idea. Paper itself is a very breathing material. It's a living material, so it can take in moisture and all that. So in that sense, The present work, it kind of makes the invisible structure of the paper visible. Normally you write on paper. So the text and the paper are two separate things. In the present body of work, the paper becomes the text. So that is one aspect. And the second is I invoke language, but not necessarily readable. There is Kannada language, there are words from the language which is used. And then sometimes I use poetry lines from Adiga and various other poets, but you'll not be able to read it. The idea is to invoke language, and the way the language becomes a kind of web which holds the individual memory as well as the society or culture's memory. So the idea of a web which comes through in the work, then that gets connected to the idea of language becoming a web as well as a filter through which we look at the outside world. So in some of the works, I use the idea of a window, language becoming a window through which we look at the world. So it becomes like a negotiator, it becomes like a kind of border. Kannada, because my mother tongue is Kannada. I studied till 7th standard in Kannada. It is still the language in which I think. Even though I write in English, initial thoughts have to come in Kannada and then it gets translated. And the Kannada alphabet form has a very beautiful organic quality to it. And when you start joining it, it becomes like a nice organic web, and I use that aspect also. I didn't even know how I will present it. When the first body of work was done, like 6-7 months into it, I said I'll document it because I have to show it to somebody, how it will look in a photograph and all that. So I started lighting it up. Then I realized, okay, shadow becomes a very important aspect of the work and an extension, and also shadow is ephemeral. Like you switch off the light, shadow is gone. So that is a very interesting aspect to me. And these works have to be staged. Like in a certain way of lighting it, presenting it, makes all the difference. Like if you see it in a ordinary lighting and all that, it doesn't really make that kind of impact. And by staging it differently, you can alter the perception of the work also. Like if I stage it in a tube light kind of light, it will look very different. And then sharp angular light will change the way you perceive it. So staging is an important aspect of the second stage of the work. The interesting part is many of these work can be displayed in different ways each time. So it is not necessary it has to be like a fixed kind of form is there. So depending on the pace where it is being displayed, I can alter it. So it has that kind of flexibility which paper itself also lends. Like a oral tradition, if you want to say. Like each time I tell the story, I can slightly alter it. When somebody sees paper, especially the non-regular kind of paper, they want to touch that. So the tactile quality of the paper is something which is foregrounded in the exhibition. They may not be able to touch it physically, but that becomes the most important aspect. The delicacy of the paper, the vulnerability of the paper, and then the way it has come together. It looks very light, like a floating kind of form. So I think people will respond to that aspect first, and then the other ideas which are woven into the work. The idea of language, the idea of all this permeability, they will start observing at some point. Then the shadows they will start seeing. So you start seeing one thing and then the other will draw you. So I'm sure they'll be able to appreciate the work for its complexity at the various levels. But I'm sure the physical aspect will be the first aspect that they will be responding to. No, the question is not what it means, but how does it make you feel?